Thank you for this opportunity to present some tentative thoughts about medical consumerism and the modern patient. I'm Steve Iliffe, retired academic GP and former Professor of Primary Care for Older People at University College London. My co-author is Professor Jill Manthorpe, Director of the Health and Social Care Workforce Research Unit at King's College London. Medical consumerism is about power, which makes it different from private medicine, which is about purchasing the best quality of care. The classic account of medical consumerism is by Haugen Lavin, who describes the essence of it as patient challenge to physician authority. Appearing in the 1960s in the United States and spreading around the world, medical consumerism arose from the combination of mid-20th century political radicalism with its critique of consumerism and the rapidly growing culture of consumer goods. Medical consumerism has not been popular with doctors. Here are two hostile views of medical consumerism across a 40-year span of professional lifetime. The first says that medical consumerism is an unwelcome thorn in the medical flesh, and the second says patient-centered care, yes, patients as consumers, no. Professionals have argued that patient challenges to medical authority worsen doctor-patient relationships, lead to prolonged and conflictual encounters, and reduce treatment concordance. Of course, there are also some positive perceptions of medical consumerism from sympathetic professionals who side with consumers. One American doctor says, "Us professionals need watchdog organizations to keep us clean, focused, and less arrogant." Medical paternalism provoked resistance, particularly from the emerging disability rights movement, and this resistance fostered the introduction of informed consent prior to treatment, legal frameworks for compulsory assessment or treatment, and better safeguards for research involvement. The women's movement also influenced medical consumerism around reducing professional control of women's bodies and challenged professional assumptions and beliefs about abortion, childbirth, and breast cancer treatments. In the beginning, that is in the 1960s, medical consumerism took up the tasks of creating information networks and special interest groups, offering patients mutual support and in some cases launching services like free clinics that competed with the existing medical system. Its appeal was greatest when services were circumscribed and choices were mostly about preferences. Examples are childbirth, which continues to change under consumer pressure, and the right to assisted dying, which is currently challenging professional and public opinion. The limitations of medical consumerism soon became apparent. People who were consumerist in attitude when well often became more passive and less critical when ill. First-generation consumerism dented medical authority less than its proponents expected. Medical consumerism itself also evolved. We propose a basic model of medical consumerism that includes three generations, representing continued challenges to physician authority, niche market customers, and managed consumers, respectively. The first generation consumer seeks help from outside the formal structures of healthcare with managing both problems and systems. Think of the National Childbirth Trust or the Alzheimer's Society. The she or he can also clash with professional power at the individual level. The second generation consumer buys services that she or he wants, like cosmetic surgery. The third generation consumer works collaboratively with their health service, getting some choices about treatment in return for a commitment to stay healthy. They may be described as expert patients when clinically focused, or lay experts when contributing to policy implementation. Medically approved areas of healthiness include self-care, healthy aging, and prosumerism. The prosumer produces and consumes services. Personal health budgets are an example of this. In the 1960s and 70s, patients had genuine grievances. Not being consulted about important decisions in treatment was commonplace. Hospital incarceration lacked legal protections, and some patients had been experimented on without consent. Challenges to physician authority led to unsatisfying communication. Scambler puts it well. Encounters were unsatisfying because communication was not comprehensible, not true, not appropriate to the situation, or insincere. Out of these conflicts, a rich civil society developed with information networks, special interest groups, mutual support organizations, and political lobbying. But nevertheless, intense individual conflicts can still break out, as in the case of Charlie Gard. Charlie Gard was born with a rare lethal genetic disorder and needed ventilation from soon after birth. His doctors recommended palliative care and withdrawal of ventilation. His parents disagreed. Crowdsourcing of funds and a large petition were organised by an ad hoc support group, Charlie's Army, whose slogan was, "If he's still fighting, we're still fighting." Conflict intensified and the Pope and Donald Trump intervened. The legal arguments went against the parents, and soon before his first birthday, Charlie died. Second-generation consumers learn from the pedagogy of defect, which teaches us that our bodies are faulty and unacceptable, but also that enhancement of the defective body is possible. Enhancements can be surgical, like cosmetic surgery, pharmacological, mood-altering drugs like Prozac, genetic engineering for future generations, and, coming soon probably, cybernetic. Second-generation medical consumers fund themselves and have created a huge industry. In the USA, 18 million people underwent cosmetic surgery procedures in 2018. Second-generation consumers, no longer hapless victims of fate but active agents grappling with their circumstances, fall easily into Baudrillard's alibi of individual needs, whereby the person's desire for enhancement is presumed to be a consequence of prior need. This prior need is established by the provider using the pedagogy of defects to define need. We could call this supplier-induced demand, or say in Baudrillard's words that the system of needs is the product of the system of production. The controversy about textured breast implants illustrates some of the problems that second-generation consumers can face. Textured breast implants are associated with development of a rare cancer, anaplastic large cell lymphoma, ALCL. The risk of development of this is low at 1 in 24,000 individuals using implants, and there were only 573 cases of the cancer worldwide identified by 2019. Textured breast implants were withdrawn from worldwide sale in 2018. In Europe and Australia, 90% of implants were textured up until their withdrawal, but only 13% of implants were textured in the USA. The US Food and Drug Administration imposed a moratorium on this insert in 1992, and US plastic surgeons have mostly stopped using them. Textured implants give better outcomes, but why did it take 25 years to act on safety concerns? There are still conflicts between patients and professionals within the second generation, despite the economic power of the patient. The professional encountering a consumer demand that seems inappropriate has three choices: to accept the consumer's demand and proceed, to invoke medical expertise and argue that the desired enhancement is not applicable or even may be dangerous, or to claim that their conscience forbids collusion. Around these positions, dialogue is possible, but arduous. The second-generation consumer can opt out of arduous negotiations with reluctant doctors by turning to medical tourism. Medical travel agencies explain that cosmetic surgery is accessible to all, not just the global elite, aligns its recipients with people of worth, and offers multiple choices of therapy. In the third generation, the managed consumer can generally choose places for treatment and some of the treatments themselves. In return, the managed consumer should also choose healthiness and should help the health service by being an expert patient or by becoming involved in consultation processes at one of the many levels within the NHS. Personal conduct is paramount. The managed consumer accepts personal responsibility for their health, adopts proactive and prevention-conscious lifestyle behaviours, makes rational decisions and shows cost-conscious exercise of choices. Managed consumers are encouraged to age successfully, to manage their own long-term conditions, and as prosumers to decide on what they need and then acquire it, perhaps in the form of a personal health budget. The ideal managed consumer expresses full engagement with the NHS as urged by the Oneness Report of 2002 on the sustainability of the National Health Service. The report said, if we do not fully engage with the NHS, it will fail under the strain of demands from passive consumers. In our view, we can learn much from first-generation consumers about how to understand people's concerns about health and how to minimize entrenched conflict. The question for professionals is, could my workplace manage a Charlie Gard scale of challenge or even preempt it? Second-generation consumerism is a black box, an under-researched area which can be avoided as a private problem. We disagree. Consumers need to know about risks and failures, which should be collated and published. The debate amongst plastic surgeons about banning advertising should be widened. The NHS, in our view, should embrace managed consumerism as one form of deliberative democracy and listen in particular to the disadvantaged, the marginalised and the excluded. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments on this presentation, please add them as a comment below the window and we will read and respond when we can. This presentation is based on a paper to be published in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine later in the year, entitled Medical Consumerism and the Modern Patient, Successful Aging, Self-Management and the Fantastic Prosumer.